There we go.
Hey! Okay,
Hi.
let me make sure I get that in the background. That's what I spent the morning. For the Textiles Center, I mounted these on magnets so students can pick them up to make their little formulations, and we can move it around. So that's been my exciting
Oh
morning.
my
Hi,
gosh.
Chloe.
Hi, Nicole. It is so good to see you. My mood is immediately like on level, cloud nine. I took the class with you when you were a guest teaching artist resident at Textile Center last April.
Hmm.
I can't, and was dyeing for spinners, and so I learned how to dye these fibers in order to spin them up in a controlled way and an informed way. Um, and I learned so much from you, but also like your creative genius and prowess behind creating these classes is also so inspiring to me. And when you were here in April, maybe that's where we start. Who are you? And I'll ask you some questions.
Yeah. Well, my name is Nicole Frost of Frost Yarn, and somebody taught me to knit 16 years ago, and within 3 months, I was dyeing my own yarn, I was spinning, I didn't even know how to like bind off. I couldn't crochet. Like I knew nothing, but I already had, there was yarn I wanted, but I didn't see it at the store. And so it became absolutely necessary. That's just, I have ADHD and I go down, yarn's been a rabbit hole, a 16-year falling down a rabbit hole. I haven't hit bottom,
Amazing.
haven't gotten bored.
I think that is a testament to your creative genius and your level of expertise in there. You're always finding something else to add to your intellectual repertoire, and building that. And you visited Textile Center in April. Can you tell me a little bit about that experience visiting us earlier this year?
It was my best professional teaching experience of 16 years doing these workshops. You guys have this incredibly large space. Number one, I've had to teach out of utility closets with a microwave before. I taught in New York. We didn't even have a water source. We had to go to a bathroom in an old, like abandoned looking building so we could fill our dye trays in a wagon.
Wow.
So the beauty of your space, how big it is, how stocked it is. That was the first time I ever taught at a dye dedicated studio.
Cool.
So, and the other thing is what's even better about the Textile Center is the staff. Like I got a producer. I got Chloe assigned to me and she helped
So much
produce
fun.
class, which was incredible. And the students really gelled well,
Mhm.
which is so key, but they all like one of them was teaching another one how to spin. One of them
Yeah.
was teaching another one how to card. Other people brought their drum carders. We had Lady of the Lake Silks, and she does unbelievably beautiful silk dyeing. And she was talking to us about her silk process. And
Oh yeah.
the most beautiful part of class is not necessarily the data transfer from my brain to yours, although I'm aware that's what you're paying for. But when you make real fiber friends, when you're turned on
Mhm.
creatively together, that is for me a life affirming experience to be a part of. And of course, I teach the students, then they go and take it back to the hive, and then I learn something new, which is what keeps me doing this because I learn more from my students than they could ever learn from me.
I don't know about that. One of the things, the feedback from our director, education director, you sent the most inclusive introductory email that either of us have ever seen in our careers. It was just covering every single base in such a respectful way and such a um, personally attuned way for each student to make sure that the class ahead of time was hitting the marks that they were expecting, but also cultivating a space that they were comfortable being in and thriving in over the time that you spent with us. And having that extension, I think, was the start of the culture that week within our classroom of collaboration, because you invited them to share, what their needs were, privately or publicly, and come as you are. And because you have such a high level of both interest and knowledge, you were able to kind of fine tune the information that you shared in the class to meet the goals, which so many of the goals in the class were both personal and professional goals. And your sharing of knowledge and your generosity of knowledge, from an entrepreneurial perspective, I think was an invaluable part of the class that isn't necessarily like an advertised piece, but comes with every class that you teach, if
Mm,
students are there for it. And
that's so kind of you to say.
mhm.
Right.
um, Yeah.
Yeah, that email came from, the early years of me teaching from 2009 to 2014. I taught exactly the way I learn.
Hmm.
Okay. I have ADHD and bipolar. I've only been medicated for bipolar for about 12 years. So there were years where I would come in and a student referred to me or a friend who was a student said, it's like a tube of farting glitter in your face for an introvert who's on the spectrum. So in 2014 was when I started to clue into, I can't teach this the way I would personally learn best. So I started doing Q&As after class. What worked, what
Mm.
didn't. And then I would do copious amounts of research on the different neurotypes. People that are autistic often don't want allegory. They want direct, they want literal, they want the science, and they want it
Hmm.
written. And I wasn't coming with written materials. It was all oral because I do better with oral. If I see a book, I don't want to read it immediately. And it's just the way I am. So all of the best aspects of that email came because we had students that were honest and authentic and raw, and we're like, this class was amazing, but it was so overwhelming that I don't even know what to do. I'm so, so it was like, oh, I can tailor the way I teach to work with people who have a super speedy
Yeah.
brain. Or my anxious learners would bring books to class and they'd make me slow down while I was teaching so they could write everything I said, and the other students weren't having fun with that
Yeah.
because they just wanted to be invested in the moment. So I was like, how can I meet both their needs at the same time? If I create written and video materials that I send out ahead of time, my anxious learners
Yeah.
won't feel the need to drag class, right?
Well, and we
So,
left with so many, resources and materials to
mhm.
keep and hold on to that you prepared for class, which I brought with me today because I reference these on a regular basis, and it's invaluable just as in my journey as a fiber artist, with
Those
dyeing
all
and
were suggestions from students. I
yeah.
remember directly the one who said, this doesn't look like sour apple green because that's the tub that it came out of in her head. And I was like, oh, because I know what it is because I've dyed it a million times. So that was when I started in 2017 dyeing every color from every line. Then I made these. This is what one of the things that comes with class are these die cards, laminated die
Yeah.
cards with the pictures of
Yeah.
what they look like on
Yeah.
yarn for the top 7 brands: Dharma, Prochem, Aljo, and I do have Prochem Saber Set and Wash Fast Acid. And then some of the less known dyes or less used dyes like Ashford, greener shades. I even have Permaset, standard colors. Just because that was such a great point. And I could bring the samples and then the students wouldn't get to go home with anything. So yeah, it was a multi-year project, thousands of dollars of
Hmm.
dye and time and yarn to do it. But that data transfer of knowledge is so much easier when you have concrete examples of what we're going to do, as opposed to just explaining the theory and showing a little picture with the
Right.
calculations. And that was because I have visual learners, I have auditory learners, I have learners who need to see it before they see it for it to sink in,
Yeah.
which is why I created videos of everything we're going to do in class that I send out ahead of time so that
Hmm.
you can watch it or not, but it's just so that I can cover as many bases as possible
Hmm.
so that everyone's showing up feeling prepared. And also for my ADHD like me learners that need a specific pace
Yeah.
to feel engaged. And then I have autistic learners that need the exact opposite, a slower, more self-paced. So it's like I need to make sure that they know they can walk away from an experiment if they're
Mm.
overloaded. We have quiet space, which is something I just worked on in my last workshop. And
Mm.
it's my goal in life is to create these connections among people who are highly driven to create art. Art form is my special area. My tattoo artist is super into tattooing, and
Yeah.
the way we express our art has different mediums, but it's the same fire that drives us, right? And
And
so
with
if I can't, go ahead,
with
sorry.
that in mind, I just wanted to kind of touch on, well, maybe we could dive into what can we expect out of this class. Whenever I describe it to people verbally, they get excited. So I want to hear you tell the
Yeah.
people about what they can expect.
So this is like trying to we've got 15 minutes. We've probably
Yeah.
burned 5. So I'm going to try to keep it condensed
Okay.
just from the fact of pictures and a short explanation. So
Yeah.
we are not here to learn how to make pretty yarn. Pretty yarn is easy. It doesn't require a class. There are a million tutorials in one. We're here to learn how to reverse engineer the dye process to work up the way you want it to, because we've all bought a beautiful skein of yarn and tried to turn it into a sock and
Yeah.
it was ugly. So we tried to put it in a shawl and it was terrible. And then we put it in a sweater and it was like clown bark. And that feeling of disconnect when you made something so pretty and it looks nothing like that when you work it
Oh,
up,
yeah.
that is so discouraging. People will not come back to dyeing. And it was very discouraging to me, but obviously not enough, because I spent about 740 hours a year on research and development from 2009 on my first nebula, or 2008 on my first nebula batch,
Ugh.
to this beautiful piece, which is a celisterium. All of those yarn overs are, this is by Audrey Nicklin. These yarn overs have a glow in the dark glass bead, and that's marking the constellations as they appear from the polar north. But I wanted a yarn that also looked like space.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw this in my head, but I had no clue. I've never taken a dye workshop. So in, 2008, 2009, 2010. So I had no idea. I was using bleach and resists and everything. So you're looking at thousands of hours of research and development so that I can transmit it to you like this. So this would be our kettle dyeing experiment in class. And what we're going to be doing is a variety of different ways with the same dye that you can lay in the color, right? And then we're going to actually be creating our own swatch books with a machine with your yarn. So these are all the same color. And there's like 8 different ways. And then, we have studies on superwash versus non-superwash. And what does a color look like on alpaca versus mohair versus superwash versus non-superwash? Because you might want to speckle that baby alpaca yarn that you just got that feels so lovely, but alpaca doesn't speckle well, not compared to superwash. So not even having to burn a batch by accident because it turned out very different than what you thought. We also go hard into planned pooling. If you're not into pooling, that's okay. You're going to learn how to avoid it. But it's basically like all the different ways you could lay in color.
Oh my God.
This created in Argyle. And we actually use a website called planpooling.com. It's amazing to engineer these skeins. I like to use black and rainbow because it's just really high contrast, right? And beyond that, I even created these reference materials to show, like, I think we can all agree that's really cool that it does this, right? But it's like, this is what it looks like at all these different cast-ons. And you only have so many stitches in the round. So I've actually broken it down by the numbers. And then you see this, because what I want to create for my students that are, I want to just be a more educated yarn consumer and maybe make some for myself at home. I want them to,
is this something that I could apply to like weaving, crochet, knitting, like just based on measurements alone?
Yeah, so I don't have woven samples of everything yet, but yes, this definitely, I have knit and crochet samples.
It's math,
and
right?
It's math. It's also, this would be my favorite part. Oh, and my husband's coming out. Okay, so I'm the creative for Frost Yarn. I come up with the ideas, but the execution is often my husband. I don't have a mathematical brain. He's the one who saw us. I showed him a picture of a triad and said, I need the math for this in 2018, and he did it. I would have never been able to do this. And so what you're looking at is just 3 primaries. We just did this one 2 weeks ago in another class that I did for Dusty Yarn Co. And she picked magenta, sun yellow, and flag blue. This is from Sabra Set. And this is 66 colors that you can get from 3 primaries. So you're going to actually get to make a class triad of 66 and go home with your own little thing, but you're also going to create smaller triads from whatever colors you want to try out. We're going to do saturation studies, which are like this, because all triads are not created equal. You need to know what value you're going to start with first, or it gets very, very unbalanced very quickly. So really diving into how dye behaves differently than paint for my people who come from a painting background, and how to really know what you're working with, what saturation point it looks like at 10 different levels, and how to better choose colors to go together, because super saturated colors and very unsaturated colors are not going to give you an even fade like these external legs of the triad. And of course, a whole speckling thing. Go ahead.
Incredible. Well, I see some questions about, if this is ever going to be available again, or if it'll be available digitally. And what I'll say is definitely follow Nicole at Frost Yarn to find out where she's going to be and what she's doing, but also sign up for Textile Center's emailing list. Go to our website and do that if you haven't, because we're sending out a survey in the next couple of months. We want to hear from you. We want to hear what kind of classes you want to see more of, what formats what you want them to be in which format. So we want to know what you want to take and how it's accessible to you. So sign up for following Nicole, follow our email list, sign up for that. And I want to ask you one final
Yep.
question, Nicole. We're so excited to welcome you back to Minnesota. What are you looking forward to when you come back to Minnesota?
Okay. I love Minnesota. I've taught there many times at Stephen B, and it is literally such an amazing hub. So looking forward to seeing you and Kristen and Brig and Mia. I'm excited about bringing my husband to teach with me for the first time, because he's going to be able to live calculate for you guys. And for my math-headed people, give you the theory behind box dyeing, triad dyeing, a single gradient. On top of that, then it would probably just be, there's so much creativity and richness in fiber arts in Minneapolis that I don't have here in coastal Southern California. It's too warm of a climate. We don't have a lot of knitters, or maybe I'm just unpopular amongst them. But every time I fly out to Minneapolis, I feel like I'm with my people.
We just want to drown ourselves in yarn. That's just the thing. We want to
I come home and it's like I'm on a yarn high, and I'm so creatively charged for weeks to months afterwards. Yeah. And so I love teaching in your space. I love the people. I love everything about.
I mean, you'll notice that I'm in sweaters already. Yeah. You're still on tank tops, right?
Oh, I'm sweating. I'm sweating in a tank top right now. Just this light, and yeah, it's like 80 degrees here right now. But there's how to go watching people in class. I'll end with this. Go from we all have, when we're knitters and crocheters, fantasy custom ideas for projects, and then you just have to pick from the available yarn. And being able to help someone create out of their head a picture I can't see based on what they're describing, that transfer of knowledge, knowing that they're going to go home and possibly spend hundreds or even thousands of hours of fun in the years to come, going to change the way they buy yarn, see yarn, and the way they experience color. And they might even go into it for a business, which I love. I'm not proprietary. And then they're going to see people vibe with their personal idea of color stories. And I loved doing that with Dusty Yarn Co. Her name's Audrey. Such a different, this is not Frost Yarn approved. Mine are neons, neons, you know. But it was getting to create out of her head gave me a new facet of myself I didn't have. Yeah. So I look forward to meeting the people in class. You have another week to sign up. Next Friday is when it closes. And it's really fun. It's quite the circus. And the last day is when we put our books together and have free play. So that's always really fun.
Yes, that's my favorite. I can't wait. I'm super excited for this iteration. I can't wait to meet everybody who is able to join us. And if you have any other questions about the class, send us a message on Instagram, write us an email, talk to Nicole, and we will see you soon, Nicole. Thank you so much. Excited.
Me too. Bye, guys. Bye.